The screenshot reached me on a Friday evening so ordinary, it almost felt insultingly calm. I was standing in my kitchen, one hand on a carton of eggs, trying to decide whether I had enough energy to make dinner from scratch or if cereal counted as self-care after 39. The dryer hummed in the next room. The sun was going down behind the neighbor's fence. My phone lit up on the counter with my sister Ava's name, and I glanced at it the way you glance at 100 harmless things in a long marriage, without thinking they might change your life. It was a photo. No message, just a photo. I opened it, and in that single second, the ground under my life shifted so completely that I don't think I ever stood on it the same way again. My husband, Ethan, was sitting in a hospital recliner with a newborn sleeping against his chest. He was smiling down at that baby with a softness I had spent 7 years begging fate to give us. Across the bottom of the image, Ava had typed words she clearly meant for someone else. He finally gets to be a dad. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I did not scream. I did not drop the phone. I did not even cry. I just stood there in my kitchen, with eggs in one hand and proof in the other, and felt something inside me go very quiet. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 39 years old, and for most of my adult life, I have been the person people call when they need the truth separated from the performance. I work as a corporate compliance investigator. My job is simple in theory and brutal in practice. I look for gaps, inconsistencies, and the kind of polished lies people think nobody will notice once they repeat them often enough. Spreadsheets, signatures, expense trails, missing details, tiny cracks in a story. I built a career on understanding that when something feels wrong, it usually is. I just never expected the biggest investigation of my life to begin in my own kitchen. Ethan and I had been married for 9 years. He was charismatic in that easy American way people trust immediately. He could make a room laugh before he even sat down. He worked in commercial real estate development, the kind of job that made him sound important at dinner parties and busy enough to excuse almost everything. When we first got together, I thought he was the safest place I had ever found. We used to talk about children the way some couples talk about vacations they fully expect to take. Not if, when. We picked out names. We argued about suburbs versus the city. We laughed about whose eyes our daughter would have and whether our son would inherit Ethan's ridiculous dimples. Then the years started passing. At first, it was patience, then concern, then doctors. Tests turned into procedures. Procedures turned into routines. My body became a calendar of injections, appointments, blood draws, and hopeful language that never seemed to survive the month. We had 2 early losses, the kind you barely know how to explain to other people because the grief arrives before the world even knows there was anything to grieve. And like so many women do, I made the mistake of turning pain inward. I blamed stress. I blamed my schedule. I blamed my body. I blamed the glass of wine I had before I knew. I blamed age. I blamed everything that let me keep believing the problem was mine to solve. Ethan would squeeze my hand in waiting rooms and tell me we were a team. He said all the right things. He said we would get through it together. He said love mattered more than biology. I believed him because I needed to. And through all of it, Ava stayed close. She was 2 years younger than me, bright and affectionate, the kind of sister who showed up with soup, candles, and carefully timed concern. If I had a procedure, she texted. If I had a setback, she called. If Ethan had to work late, she offered to take me to appointments. That's the detail that still gets me. Not just that she betrayed me, that she helped me survive the pain she was quietly helping create. The night I saw the screenshot, I didn't call either of them. I didn't send a single message. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and did the thing I have trained myself to do for 15 years. I started gathering facts. By 9 o'clock, I had booked a consultation with a divorce attorney named Jordan Keller. By midnight, I had already pulled 6 months of joint account activity. By 2 in the morning, I had stopped hoping the photo meant anything other than exactly what it looked like. There were charges I never would have noticed if I hadn't been looking with purpose. A furnished apartment on the north side of town paid through a shell property service. Pharmacy charges in a neighborhood Ethan never had business in. A private ultrasound clinic. Grocery deliveries to an address I didn't know. One streaming subscription connected to an email that used Ethan's middle name and Ava's birth month. People think betrayal is always dramatic. It usually isn't. Usually, it hides inside ordinary purchases. A week into digging, I found the lease. Not directly, of course. People who lie for a long time learn not to leave the obvious things sitting on top. But the utility records connected to the apartment lined up with a forwarding receipt. And the forwarding receipt led me to a mailbox service. And the mailbox service led me to the name Ethan had used on a secondary contact form. It was him. 3 years. That apartment had been in use for 3 years. 3 years while he sat across from me at dinner, asking if I thought we should try one last round of treatment. 3 years while my sister held my shoulders in a clinic bathroom and told me none of this was my fault. I built a file. Hotel receipts, payment confirmations, appointment dates, side-by-side timelines, screenshots, address matches, copies of public records. A neat, cold, devastating chronology of a marriage that had apparently been over long before I knew it was ending. Jordan, my attorney, looked through the folder with the controlled expression of a man who had seen every species of heartbreak and still knew better than to underestimate a woman who had finally stopped lying to herself. "This is more than enough to proceed," he said. I nodded. I thought that was the whole truth. I was wrong. 2 days later, my phone rang with Ethan's mother's number. Helen and I had always gotten along. She was polished, gracious, the kind of woman who wrote thank you notes by hand and never arrived anywhere looking rushed. When I answered, she was breathing hard enough that I thought something terrible had happened. "Claire," she said, and then stopped. I waited. When she spoke again, her voice sounded fragile in a way I had never heard before. "Please don't tell Ethan yet." The words landed strangely. Not "please forgive him," not "please hear him out," not even "please don't file." Just that. "Please don't tell Ethan yet." My whole body went still. There are moments in life when you realize you have uncovered a disaster, but not yet the center of it. That was one of them. I met Helen the next afternoon at a quiet diner 20 minutes from my house. She was already there, both hands wrapped around a coffee cup she clearly had no intention of drinking. She looked older than she had a week earlier, not in face or posture, but in burden, like she had been carrying something for so long it had finally become visible. "I should have told the truth years ago," she said before I even sat down. I didn't interrupt. "I thought I was protecting my son," she said. "I was really protecting myself from watching him break." My pulse slowed instead of racing. That happens to me when things get serious. My feelings move to the side. My mind gets sharper. "What truth?" I asked. Helen pressed her lips together. "Does Ava know?" "That depends on what you're about to say." "She doesn't," Helen said quickly. "And Ethan doesn't either. At least, he didn't." That sentence didn't make sense yet, but I could feel it assembling itself. 8 years earlier, during our second year of fertility testing, Ethan had completed a full round of diagnostics with our specialist, Dr. Naomi Mercer. A report had been mailed to the house. Ethan was traveling. Helen had been collecting our mail while we were away for a weekend and opened the envelope by mistake. Inside was a finding she believed would devastate him. The issue had not been mine. It had been his. Severe male factor infertility, the kind that should have led to a full conversation, new decisions, and truth. The kind that would have changed the emotional math of our entire marriage. Helen panicked. She called Dr. Mercer. She begged for time. And then, she did the unforgivable thing people do when they convince themselves love gives them the right to decide for others. She buried it. I stared at her across that diner table and thought about every night I had apologized to Ethan in the dark for a failure that had never belonged to me. Every procedure, every bruise, every prayer, every ounce of shame. Not mine, not ever. I need the records, I said. Helen nodded like she had known that would be my answer. Dr. Mercer still practiced 2 towns over. When I called her office, she put me in the schedule the same day. I think she knew the moment she heard my name that the past had finally come back for everyone involved. Her office looked almost exactly the way I remembered it. Soft lighting, pale walls, framed watercolor prints trying to make loss look gentler than it is. She met me with a file already on her desk. "I failed you," she said quietly before I opened it. I let a mother's fear interfere with a patient's right to the truth. I appreciated the honesty, even if it was late. The report was clinical, clean, precise. No drama, no cruelty, just facts. But facts do not need emotion to destroy a lie. They do it better without it. There it was in black and white. The years of infertility I had been carrying as personal guilt had begun with information Ethan never received and I was never allowed to see. And then, the second truth hit me. If this report was accurate, and I had no reason to believe otherwise, then the baby in Ava's photo was very unlikely to be Ethan's biological child either. I sat there with that realization in my lap like a live wire. The affair was real. The betrayal was real. But the story they thought they were living inside might not have been real at all. I did not call Ava. I did not call Ethan. I did what I had been doing from the start. I let the truth keep moving toward them. It happened 4 nights later. Ethan had arranged a dinner at Helen's house so she could properly meet the baby. I was not invited, obviously, but I didn't need to be there. By then, the truth had enough momentum to walk in on its own. Later, Helen told me everything. Ethan arrived carrying flowers and confidence. Ava followed him with the baby in a car seat and that careful, exhausted glow new mothers wear when they are still trying to believe the life they chose will hold. Ethan told his mother, smiling, "You're finally a grandmother." Helen said something in her broke open when she heard that sentence out loud. She asked them to sit. She went to her study, and from the back of a locked drawer, she pulled the envelope she had hidden for 8 years. Ethan read the report once, then again, then a third time more slowly, like a man trying to force language to mean something kinder than it did. "This is mine?" he asked. Helen nodded. "This was always mine?" She nodded again. He sat there in a silence so complete, Helen said even the baby stopped fussing. Then Ava asked the question that changed her face before anyone answered it. "What does that mean?" Nobody needed to explain it fully. Not really. If Ethan had carried that diagnosis all those years, and if nothing had ever been treated or resolved in any meaningful way, then the child she had built her future around may not have been his after all. Helen said the room turned cold in an instant. Not in temperature, in certainty. Ethan left 10 minutes later with a report in his hand and the look of a man who had just watched 2 entire lives collapse at once. The one he betrayed and the one he built from betrayal. He came to my house that night. When I opened the door, he looked wrecked. Not polished, not persuasive, just wrecked. His eyes were red. His shirt was wrinkled. The report was folded so tightly in his fist, it looked damp. "You knew," he said. "I found out," I answered. He stepped inside when I moved back, and we sat in the living room where we had once decorated Christmas trees and argued over paint colors and tried to become people neither of us knew how to be. He told me everything Helen had said. He told me Ava had sworn she had never known about the report. He told me he had not known either. He told me the baby might not be his. He told me his mother had stolen 8 years of truth from both of us. Then, finally, he said what he had really come to say. "If I had known, Claire, if I had known back then, none of this would have happened." That was the sentence. The one he had been building toward. The one he wanted me to receive as explanation, maybe even mercy. I looked at him for a long moment. "You're right," I said. "Your mother's lie changed everything." Hope flickered across his face too early. Then I kept going. "But it didn't make you sleep with my sister." He looked down. "It didn't make you come home to me and pretend. It didn't make you watch me blame myself. It didn't make you build a second life while I was still standing inside the first one trying to save it. What your mother did was cruel. What you did was chosen." He cried then, really cried. Not because he got caught, not in that moment. Because sometimes the truth arrives too late to save a person from becoming exactly what they swore pain had made them. "I did love you," he said. "I believe you," I said. "And that's what makes it worse." He asked if there was any chance at all. No speeches, no legal strategy, no dramatic pause. Just a simple question from a broken man. I gave him a simple answer. No. The divorce went through 7 weeks later. I did not ask for revenge. I asked for fairness. The numbers were clean. The settlement was reasonable. Jordan said I could have pushed harder. Maybe I could have. But by then, I no longer needed the paperwork to punish him. The truth had already done that more completely than I ever could. Ava left the state before the final hearing. I heard through a mutual cousin that a paternity test had been ordered. I never asked for the result. By then, I understood something I wish I had known much earlier. Not every answer is your responsibility to carry. Helen called me after the papers were signed. She did not ask for forgiveness. That mattered more than if she had. She just said she was sorry, and that if I never wanted to hear her voice again, she would understand. I surprised both of us by telling her I needed time, not distance forever. Some damage is unforgivable. Some people are still human inside it. A year later, I took part of my settlement and helped launch a patient advocacy program with a women's health nonprofit in Chicago. We work with couples navigating fertility treatment, medical reporting, informed consent, and access to records. No one should ever have to build their identity around a secret someone else thought they had the right to keep. People ask me sometimes if I regret those 9 years. I regret the lies. I regret the silence. I regret the version of myself that thought love required self-blame. But I do not regret the woman I became when the truth finally found me. Because here is what I learned. Betrayal can break your heart. Deception can break your trust. But the moment you stop carrying guilt that was never yours, something powerful begins to grow back in its place. Not bitterness, not revenge, authority, peace. a life with your own name written clearly across it. And if I ever love again, it will not be from hunger. It will be from wholeness. That is a very different kind of beginning.